Power to the people about to do maintenance. Thank you for tuning into the Two Stubborn Nigerians YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Enjoy the video. That was Escape off the album Life of a Don by Don Toliver. Life of a Don finally released on October 8th, 2021. It comes in at 16 songs. Marco's perfect number of songs. 51 minutes and 34 seconds. Before we go any further, special shout out to Mike Dean, who I know had to work double, maybe triple time between Kanye doing all the nonsense that Kanye does with his albums, Don coming with this album, and I know that Travis Scott probably has him locked up in some dungeon somewhere, prepping for whenever he drops. So I hope one day Mike Dean gets to rest, at least not right now, because there's no rest for the wicked. And what you did on that track alone was very wicked. So you definitely don't get to rest right now. Life of a Don Toliver. As you heard from the two gentlemen previously, this is something that all three of us were heavily anticipating. We've been ready for this album. As Raheem said it a few podcasts ago, from the moment Heaven or Hell dropped in, what was that, March 2020, he was instantly the next week like, okay, but when's the next one? Because I need it right here, right now. And I'm not going to say that I agree with you, but I definitely don't disagree with whoever said that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember I was working when Heaven and Hell dropped in the gym. Like, it was early morning, so the gym was closed. I was in there just getting everything like set up. And I was like just kicking a football around, and like it was an AstroTurf gym, so that people don't think, why do you have a football in a gym? It was like that type of gym. So I was like working, kicking a football around. And I just remember when No Idea finished and that album was done, I was like, no, this isn't it. Like, you're not done. There's more that you need to get out. I can feel it. So you clearly weren't done. Like, there was more you wanted to tell me on Euphoria. Like, I could, you didn't tell me you didn't go deep enough on Company. I know there was more. So I was right there with you. And then when he dropped Moon, like, fuck that other guy. When he dropped Moon and said, I want to go to the moon, I was like, no. Because clearly you're taking this somewhere. And then he decided to go and do a little tour, which made us think the album was going to be pushed back. I was certain we weren't going to get it until 2022. So when it came, it was definitely a surprise. I'm going to start us off by playing a little game that we like to do here every time to time. I say I do it. He hates it, but I do it. Marco, if you had one word to describe this album, how would you describe it?
When I've been looking around to see sort of how other people what sort of reception other people were giving it, because I was curious, because I was like, are people going to say, oh no, this is too weird, or like, are they saying, oh, it's going to sound the same? There was one word which kept cropping up, and it was ethereal. And I think it's like the perfect word that sort of, it just puts his sound into a little capsule and just shakes it up. And when you let it out, it just creates this sound that can't really be paralleled. It can't be compared to anything really, other than maybe a Travis Scott album of the past or something along those lines, because it just doesn't sound like anything else.
Nah, I like that was low-key perfect. I'll probably go with magic, man. Magic. You know, I love that word. It felt like magic. It felt like Don Toliver is so good at creating that feeling that, genuinely speaking, the only other time I felt it is the very first time I heard Kid Cudi hum. That's the only other time I felt that feeling. And Don Toliver does it so often and so easily that it's crazy. It's like magic to me, man.
Dope. I'll play along. If I had to go with one, I'd say existential. It's definitely like it's so vibey, it's out of body. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're saying about when Cudi's in his humming bag, it feels out of body. And this album has qualities which I mentioned other albums from other artists, where like you feel like the room is sort of encapsulated in the vibe, even just the way that, I'm assuming it's a flute, is going off at the beginning of Escape to just lure you in. And then, yeah, the way it crescendos and chasms and waves throughout the album is dope. It's special. I'm gonna go back to you now, Marco. what's your overall synopsis on the album as a whole? Just talk about it in generalities. How do you feel about it? What was it now? A few weeks since it's dropped. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts? Just bear it all out as you see fit.
Well, in short, I really like it. I really enjoyed listening to it. It took me a few goes to get used to some of the tracks. So 5 times would be one. First time around, I wasn't sure, and Get Throwed as well. I wasn't too sure when I first heard it because the piano from Mustard's beat sounds a tad clunky, and I think that his vocals and his harmonies save that track in a big way, which sort of brings it right back up to a high standard. But I think as a whole, it's incredibly good. Like it's telling a story. It's sort of like it's taking you on a journey, and it's almost like you can see it in the way that it's structured when you sort of think about what the songs are and you see how it's laid out and like what he's trying to do in different little runs. So the double standards down to Drugs and Hella Melodies. Yes, you knew what he's doing in that pocket, and you know exactly what he's going for. And I think he just hits the nail on the head with it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, saying that, there are 2 tracks that I can live without, if I'm totally honest. Smoke is one, for no reason other than I feel like it doesn't bring a huge amount to me. Like I'm not too big on the featuring artists, and something about the beat just doesn't feel full enough. It feels like there's gaps. That, and even with Drugs and Hella Melodies, I think that could have been so much better than it turned out to be. Like I think with the potential that both Don Toliver and Kali Uchis have in terms of their like vocal performances, like I think that song could have been taken to a different planet, but I think it's just a little bit too toned down. But even so, it makes perfect sense in the listing and the ordering of the album because it helps to break it down, and it sort of nicely transitions into 2 a.m. and then down through the rest of the album. But I think as a project, in terms of how it's all laid out and the way that the sort of sound carries, I think it's spot on. I think it's exactly what I expected, if I'm honest. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't say I'm surprised by what it sounds like, but I enjoy exactly what it is, and I enjoy each song for a very different reason.
This is why I was happy when I from day one when we said that we're gonna have Don Toliver conversation. I said Marco has to be involved. Paul said absolutely, obviously, because I knew that Marco is gonna have such a sensible opinion on this, and it's crazy because we haven't discussed this album at all. So I didn't know what any of you guys were gonna come in and say about this album. When I first listened to it, I was disappointed isn't the word. It's not the word at all. When I first listened to it, it took me there was a few songs, like you said, 5 times. What other song? There was a couple songs on there where I was like, man, is this better than Heaven or Hell? Or does this just make me want to go back and listen to Heaven or Hell when he got it spot on? And I was confused because I was like, this isn't what I was expecting. And it took me, I went away, I listened to Heaven or Hell. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I have my songs from this album that I really like. And maybe there's other songs that I could have done without. That's fine. But this is why, and it's one of the reasons why I always say on this podcast, man, intros are so important. Because we just played it. Escape was the intro for this album. And I think that being the intro is why I can come here today and say that this album was magic for me. Because every day since this album has come out, I'll catch myself humming the beat to Escape and thinking, man, I want to listen to the song again. And here's it, because there's differences. Like Ty Dolla $ign featuring Ty Dolla $ign had songs on that album that I liked, but we both came in here and we both said, oh, well, I say both, me and Paul, came in here and said, yo, Ty Dolla $ign's album wasn't necessarily it. And I haven't, if I'm being honest, I haven't gone back to go and listen to it because those songs weren't the intro. But when the song that I like is the intro, all I do is go to the album, click play, and now the whole album plays. So the whole album is playing. There's songs that, yeah, they're cool. They're not necessarily what I want. By the fourth, fifth time I've played this album, I know the words, and suddenly I'm singing along, and the album for me transformed once I was able to sing along to these songs. And I don't know, I have to assume that's what he was going for. But again, once I was able to sing along to 5 times to oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name, to Outer Space. Company 2 got 10 times. I like Company 2 the first time I heard it. It got 10 times better when I could sing along to it. Flocky Flocky with Travis Scott got better when I could sing along. Double Standards got better when I could sing along. Swanging on West. This one was for me because I always say Westminster, but it's definitely not Westminster. Where's that? West Timor? I don't care. It got better when I could sing along.
No. Sound it.
No.
It's very clearly Westheimer.
Yeah, it's very clearly.
They swear. Oh, I've been saying West Timor. Why did the T and the H live right next to each other like that? That's crazy. That's the yo, nah, I can't lie. It just got so much better when it got so much better once I could sing along to the album, man. And it just goes to say, like, intro. I wish more artists took the intro as seriously as Don Toliver took this one, because the intros for me is what saved this whole listening experience, and more than saved it. Even it lifted the whole thing up, man. Like, it really let me come back enough times so I could really appreciate what I was listening to, because I couldn't appreciate it the first time.
I don't like the fact that we're living the same life. That's all. When I first listened to this album, the first thing I thought about was Heaven or Hell. So I went and listened to Heaven or Hell, and I remembered how much I loved that album. And then I went on Twitter a few days later, and one of the pages I follow, I've mentioned him before, Dragonfly Jones, who has a podcast, Jacoby and Jones, or Jenkins and Jones. They can not know in that podcast. It's not like I watch it anyway. He tweeted, the best thing I can say about this new Don Toliver album is it makes me want to listen to Heaven or Hell and remember how fucking sensational that album is. Like that. Yep, it's exactly how I feel. The more I've listened to this album, the more I've appreciated it for what it is, and for the good to greatness that is within this album. I go to my point that I made about Donda, and I've made about other albums that we've talked about on this podcast, that just sounding good doesn't mean shit to me anymore. I need more than that, and I think that's the negative I have on this album. I'm like you, Marco. I like reading what other people have to say about other albums, whether it's to see whether I think you're completely wrong, and let me tell you why you're wrong, or to see if there's anyone who agrees with me, especially people who are paid to do that shit. Not that they're right, but they're paid for it. I want to be paid for it one day. But hey, man, for right now, we're doing it for free. And I like going to Pitchfork as well, because Pitchfork have Black people, at least that I know of. And so I'm going to read, this is literally the first line of the Pitchfork review of this album by Alphonse Pierre. He says, and I quote, "The Texas rapper's latest album sounds so damn good that the emptiness of it all is an afterthought." Close quote. That's the album. That's the album. It sounds fucking amazing. And the more you listen to it, the more amazing it sounds. You're able to pick out the funky bits. I agree with you. 5 times is still a bit iffy. I agree. What's the song again? Gosh, I got it in front of me now. Smoke. I agree. Smoke is a bit iffy. I just didn't feel the features. But as a whole, that's why I said existential. The overall feel and the overall vibe of the album, beautiful. Escape. I like Drugs and Hella Melodies, but that's because I like Kali Uchis' voice, and whenever I can hear that, Kali Uchis can sing the alphabet to me, and I would give it a Grammy. Do you know what I'm saying? So I love that. Way Bigger, loved it. Swanging on Westheimer, loved it. But I was sat there, I was like, he's not saying anything. He's really not. And the beauty of Heaven or Hell is that it sounds great, and he's saying shit. Like when you get into it, like when you get into Euphoria, like he's saying shit. Like he obviously he has a few songs here and there where no idea he's not really saying shit. It's more of a hit, and you'll excuse that. But throughout a lot of this album, it's just like you're not really saying anything. Now, the Pitchfork article I was reading goes on to say Don Toliver graduated cum laude from the Travis Scott School of How to Make Nothing Sound Like Something. I think that's harsh because Travis Scott doesn't do that. When Travis Scott's at his best, he has a lot to say. He just makes it sound really good. And you may get lost in the fact that it's sounding really good, that he has shit to say. Songs like 90210, where he's really, really rapping about his come up. It just sounds fucking heavenly, so you're not really paying attention. But Don here, overall, I like this album. I like listening to it. It's a really good listening experience. I personally would have liked just a bit more substance. Even when you're calling the album Life of a Don, talk about what you've been living about for the past year. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the tour? I mean, you haven't really been on tour. What's the tour life been like? What's it like with the fame? Find ways to interweave that. And if you had done that just a little bit more, I would have gone from liking this album to loving this album. But I do feel, like I say, one of the best qualities about this album is that you will go back to listen to it because of the overall feel. And then it will force you to go back to listen to Heaven or Hell, which to me is a fucking sensational album. One of the best we've had in the last 2-3 years in music. So I'm not too mad at it overall.
Question.
Hit me.
Do you excuse the album not necessarily having as much substance? Bearing in mind, when did Heaven or Hell come out? It came out last year, right?
March 2020.
Right. So bearing in mind, between that album and this album is basically just been COVID lockdown.
No, because he's in Houston.
Damn, he is in Houston. Damn, I tried, Don. I tried.
He's in Houston, but also that's a topic. Like you can talk about that. I just feel like there was, and it's not even like I'm saying substance isn't like talking about a come up or talking about, man, the world's been going crazy, or man, there was this election. I ain't talking about, there's just an emptiness to it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like even on the songs that we're saying we like, and you say that you know the words now, you can sing along. What are the words? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what is he actually saying? And again, this isn't. I said the same shit about Kanye. I said the same shit about, like, I'll say the same shit about everyone. It's just like there's just something I feel like is missing, and there's a connection that's missing. And I feel like for me, at least, the connection was I just needed something more to be hitting. Like even a song I love, and I loved it from when I heard it as a single, What You Need. Love that song. Like even with that, where he's just talking about essentially just fucking bitches. Like, tell me what you need. Like I'll get it. That I'm cool with. I'm cool with that. But there was just a punch missing. And for me, I felt like the punch was just he's not really saying anything that I need to listen to. I'm more just listening to the production and the melody and the beat around and the environment created around it, which isn't a bad thing. I just think it's a slight coming off Heaven or Hell, but you did it so well.
Yeah.
No, carry on.
The thing with Don Toliver, I know that he's not really saying shit, really. Like he's not someone who you're going to go get lyrical content from. You're not going for him to spray facts about how he's going to destroy the game or anything like that. Because that's not what it's not in his job description. I put him in like a similar sort of bracket to where I hold someone like a Young Thug or a Kid Cudi, where quite a lot of it is just down to not so much what they're saying, but just how it sounds and sort of like how it helps to elevate the track. Because I find that in quite a few of these songs, as much as a huge amount of the production is actually incredibly good, there are a few times where his melody and his vibrato and stuff just save the track. So as much as I love 2 a.m., I love that song, and I think it's definitely one of the sort of highlights of the album. I do think that it's quite a lot of it is it's saved very much by what he sounds like on the actual beat. So I think he's one of those people where it's very much he's just trying to capture a vibe. He's trying to paint a picture with what he's basically trying to paint what he's hearing, and you can basically see exactly where he's going with it.
You know what? Yeah, because I was gonna agree. My initial instinct was to agree with that because it's what I always say, man. There's certain artists I go to give me that like deep lyrical stuff, and certain artists who I'm going to catch a vibe with. But then I have to look at who do I compare not even compare, but who's in Don Toliver's class, and I'll say the one person who every time I think of Don Toliver or every time I think of this person, I think of the other. Like, I don't know why my brain pairs them together, but it does. And that is Roddy Ricch. And for me, I think, okay, what's Roddy Ricch's biggest song? The Box. Cool. The Box is the Box. What's my favorite Roddy Ricch song? Is War Baby. And I think about the words to War Baby is like, no, man, Roddy Ricch was talking. Like, I don't know if I can then necessarily cut Don Toliver that same slack. And that's literally just thought I've had just now. But I don't know if I can cut him that slack if his classmates, who I would then say are right there with him, are really getting on here and saying, we're robbing we're type of niggas that will rob the robbers. And then Don Toliver not really giving me lyrical punches, even if it's just here and there.
Do you know what it is though? It's not even like the lyrical punches, like, because what you're saying, Marco, I agree with. He's using his voice as an instrument, which is a skill, right? And like Cuddy does it. Cuddy's the best at it. That's why all these niggas like credit Cuddy. He's been the best at it for over a decade, using his voice as an instrument, and it helps a song. But even Cuddy's best songs, they come with like not necessarily bars, but so even to, and again, just to use like Don as his own example, the song that comes to mind now, When I Go to Heaven or Hell, Cardigan, right? He's not really saying anything in Cardigan. I'm finna stand in it. I'm in it. You be on my back, I could cardigan. But the lyrics and the flow and the words add to the song. They add a bounce to the song, which complements the beat just as well as the beat and the melody mesh. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas on this, I feel like there's a missing element in what he's actually saying. So he's using his voice as an instrument just as well, the beats just as well, the melodies just as well. But then when he's actually rapping or even singing, it's not complementing everything else as well to create the same sort of, not even the same, but to complete the vibe. Do you know what I'm saying? Even after party. Okay, I pull up, hop out in the after party. The beats high tempo. We're going high tempo. Then he comes in high tempo, so it elevates everything up. We're still gonna keep going. Whereas on this, I don't feel like the fact that I can't recall to words in my head, or I can't recall in my head words that like do that same thing on this album. No matter how many times I've listened to this album now, I feel like there's just a missing element. Not to take anything away, because like I say, I still think this is a really good album. I enjoy listening to it. I'll continue to listen to it and continue to support it. Shit, when this nigga comes to the UK, I mean, I won't go to the tour, but I'll pretend I'd like to go to the tour. But it will be celebrated. And so I just feel like there's something that maybe it's just me, but there's something that I'm missing.
Yeah, because those, especially with those examples you gave, I don't know if I can follow you on those ones. Because that's the one thing for me is that sonically it never didn't make sense. Like if I'm talking from a pure how this sounds type of thing. And those songs that you just mentioned, again, for me, it's like more so sonically than anything, where the listening experience is amazing because sonically it sounds amazing.
What do you think I'm saying?
Where you're saying, okay, so like with Cardigan, is an amazing song because the hook is simple. He's not doing too much. You're not even, the lyrics aren't necessarily punchy or whatever, but then his bouncing and his cadence on that song makes perfect sense. And it sounds amazing from what you're saying.
Okay.
And I don't think he doesn't have that on this album.
Okay, so we just disagree on that point. Okay, that's fine.
See, I think, because I know you're going out and throwing After Party out there, which is without a doubt probably numbers wise and popularity wise, it's probably the sort of biggest song on that album. I think it was the main single off the album. I think it was the
Migo track from Jack Boys, but I feel you.
If not,
yeah, that's true as well. But I think if you compare, like realistically, because because that was like the main single that came out, and it was apparently he did that in one take as well.
Sounds like it.
Like apparently he went off, and Sonny Digital was just like, this guy's going absolutely bananas on this beat. Like, but I think because realistically, you're going to be comparing it to what's the big single of Life of a Don, and it's What You Need. And I think the tone of it and the tone of sort of like where the album's going is just sort of very much, it's different. So like Heaven or Hell is more like sort of, it's like a high speed chase. Like in terms of like, if you're driving, it's like you're driving around at dangerous speeds, you're swerving in and out, you're going crazy behind the wheel. But I feel like with this album, it's very much sort of like establishing that he can nail that sound. He can nail the sort of high tempo. He can nail that. But then I feel like this is very much sort of covering that sort of middle ground where he's very much got his R&B bag, which he dips into regularly on this album. So like Double Standards and Swangin' on West Time are like both. I think Double Standards is probably the best song on the album. I think the instrumental, like the melodies, I think when like the bass kicks in sort of like towards the end, I'm just like, nah, this is like something special. And it caught my attention in a big way first time around. And it's just gotten better and better every time I've heard it. But I do get what you mean in that you need that little bit more to sort of like push it over the edge.
I think more than anything, it's consistency. Because you're right. Like when you made the point about Afterpipe being the biggest single, so you compare it to What You Need. I think he does it on What You Need, like perfectly. I think he does it perfectly on not many. I think he does it perfectly on some of the songs on this album, like Company Part 2. I think he does it perfectly. I think he does it perfectly on You as well. Escape too. It's just that where he's done it in the past, which is Heaven or Hell, and that's the only real time I can go to it. It's the whole album has done it perfectly. And here I feel like there are not too many. There are gaps. And when those gaps come, it hurts the album it hurts the project as a whole. Because then it just feels like, okay, then why is this song here? It almost feels like it's not complete. Like you haven't fully gone in the way you needed to complete this album. I do also think this album was rushed.
I think it probably was.
I do think this album was rushed. I think it was. There are just moments, like you were saying before, with when you talk about the mustard piano just being off. There are just points where I'm listening to this album where I feel like this is rushed, and so I think there's elements where I'm just like, he does it well enough for me to like the album, well enough for me to enjoy this album. But for me to have loved this album, there needed to be that. It needed to do it consistently throughout the album. I don't think he does that, in my personal opinion. Raheem, what's a song that people need to listen to from this album, and go in depth as to why they need to listen to it? Talk to your fan base.
Man, everyone needs to go and listen to Drugs and Hella Melodies.
Why do they need to listen to Drugs and Hella Melodies, in your opinion, good sir?
Because I remember listening to this song, I think it was sometime at the end of last year.
I mean, it wasn't. It was this year, because it only came out this year. But
this year?
Yes,
where he dropped the music video.
Sure.
Yeah. I remember listening to it and thinking, I don't know if I like this, but I didn't hear an album for ages. So I didn't think, okay, it's not, in my head, it wasn't going to make the album because of how long it had been. But the song, for me, is an example of my whole listening experience with this album, where it got way better in context of the album. The song just got way better for me. Way better for me. Kali Uchis sounds amazing. Don Toliver sounds amazing to me. Again, it's just I love this song, man. I love this song. It's one of those songs that, like, once you know the words to it as well, and you start singing along, yeah, you're gonna hit those high notes, and your throat's gonna hurt afterwards, but it's worth it. Pause.
I was waiting. Marco, what's the song people need to listen to off this album, and why?
For me, I think it's gonna be Company Part 2, because I think when it comes to sort of like part 2s and trying to follow up from like a previous song, you've got to capture the same sort of tone but do it totally differently. And I think Metro has done an outrageous job to pull that out, because it's probably one of the standout songs from Heaven or Hell for me. And then to bring the part 2, and I was thinking, where can you go from that? But then it's just like the beat, so like in the way that Metro does it so perfectly, it's so simple, but it's got so much to it. Like it all hits, it hits at the right time, the beat stops and pauses at the right time. But then even when it comes to Don delivering the hook, like every single time the sort of the tone is different, and he's sort of like, so in love with me.
Oh my god!
Like it is magical. I think it's top tier. I think it has to be the one that I'd pick for everyone to listen to. Has to.
That's a great. Go ahead.
You know what's funny? Like, as I usually do when people do stuff like this, where they say, "Okay, this is part 2 or whatever," I went and I literally I played part 1 and I queued up part 2 next, and I was like, I love Company, but Company part 2 might be better. It might be better. That song is sweet. That song is sweet for real, man. Oh my god, I was waving my hand. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was waving my hand.
I was listening to this album for the first time in my car as I was driving, and like obviously I don't see the track list in it. I don't know what song is called what, and I'm literally just listening. I'm like, why does this nigga keep saying Company? Like, is this Company part 2? Like, what's going on? I literally put it up, but I was like, man, it was, and yeah, it's sweet. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's better than Company part 1 because I just love Company part 1, like just the way it fits on that album, and just it's beautiful. But this is and like you said, the way he feels like he switches each time. The vibe just totally changes. The hook is infectious. I love that. Me swanging on Westheimer. That shit is potent. It's like cracking my system. I don't know what it is. I do know what it is. It's the fact that he starts off the second verse saying she's gone off the Henny and tequila. I was like, got me. That's me. It's me. I am she, and she is me. We are one and the same. I'm going off that Henny. And it comes right in the middle of, like you mentioned, that 3-track run of double standards, swinging on Westheimer, Into Drugs and Hella Melodies. You can make it a 4-track one if you want to bring on What You Need, but I think What You Need is more put there as a spacer between the first 4 and then the next 3, and then 2 a.m. is a spacer to the next part. But like just the way it fits there then flows into Drugs and Hella Melodies, and like you said, Kali Uchis just does Kali Uchis things which are never good for my soul and my spirit. Never good for my soul and my spirit for Kali Uchis to be doing Kali Uchis things. But
that track as well, Swaying on Westheimer. It's a Justin Timberlake sample.
It is.
Is it?
Until the end of time.
Until the end of time.
Like,
I have to listen to our whole album differently.
Like some of that, and some of the high notes he hits on that track, it's so sweet. He just hits it so smoothly.
I'm telling you, this whole work day today that I've been listening to that album in preparation for this podcast, fam, I've been singing my ass off, and I've been trying to hit every single one of those notes. The 7 times I've listened to it today, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but I'm getting closer and closer, man.
I mean, you're not, but I love the fact that you believe you are. Metro booming. I gotta give a shout out to Metro. Metro is all over this project, and he's sensational. He produced Swanging on Westheimer, produced Company Part 2. Best in the game. Legend of this shit. Like, again, his ability to get the best out of whoever he's working with is so special. So special. Raheem, talk to me about the production on this album.
Elite. There isn't too much that even needs to be said. I feel like you even said it perfectly. The sound itself is what carries this album, and I feel like it's the pairing. So Don Toliver, that's not even to say that when I say the sound carries the album, it's not to say that Don Toliver at all was carried, because if Don Toliver didn't do what he did on all the songs, then it wouldn't be what the album is, obviously. But just the vibe that's curated throughout this whole album is so concise, and it's so, what's the word I'm looking for, man? There has to be a word for it. It's melodic. It's melodic in it. It's hard for me to describe it, man. It's hard for me to describe it. That's why the word I use was magic, for real. because it's like, it's just magic. It is magic, man. Not too much is done. I mean, I remember, what was it, a few weeks ago where you said that I just love drums. And I don't even think there's any point on this album where it's like, man, the way that this beat is kicking right now, like just the drum is getting to me, or somewhere the beat just goes so stupid where I just have to point it out. But there's no point where there's no beat on this album that I don't love, if that makes sense. It's so well put together. Because to be honest with you guys, I didn't do the research into who produced what on this album, which I probably should have, to be honest, because I love every song on here. But it's so concise that if you guys have come onto this podcast today and said, yeah, it was all produced by XXX, I would be like, yeah, no, it makes sense, because it sounds like it was just produced by one person. The sounds aren't, it's just that concise where it's like, yeah, this could have easily been produced by one person in 1 week, and Don Toliver just hopped on everything, and it makes that much sense.
Marco, question to you. You look at this album, you take his past album, Heaven or Hell, you take everything he's done in between that, all the features, whether it's his and hers, Lemonade, Moon. I can't remember the feature that was on Slime Language 2 where he took over that album too.
Oh, No Surprise.
No Surprise.
Thank
you.
That's yeah.
Like, when you think about all of that in totality, where do you think he's going for his career? Where do you think his next? Where does he need to improve? Does he need to improve? Is there room for improvement? Like, what you just look at the career that he's had thus far to date. What are you feeling?
I mean, I think everyone's got room for improvement. Like, realistic, like no one makes perfect music. I mean, there's arguments that there's people who have their bags and they have their little sections where it's like that's their thing and they can nail it. Mm-hmm. But I think there's always room for improvement. I think with his whole discography, I don't know if you went back and listened to Donny Womack, because that is, I mean, I think for like a introduction to someone as like what their sound is going to be like, and how it sort of evolved from there to now with everything in between. I think he can only really go up, but I think it's just...
Side note, not to cut you off, I love doing that shit. Like, I implore everyone to do that shit. If you catch onto an artist and you think that you've heard their debut, you probably haven't. Like, if they have a project out before the first time you heard them, you need to listen to that shit, because you see just seeing them figuring out how to make music is so dope. And then you see them become polished, especially like, obviously Heaven and Hell was his first on a major, and Donny Womack came out when he wasn't on a major. So you're seeing just the difference between someone just beginning out and then going on to a major and actually getting the polished production, the polished support to push it out. Sorry to cut you off.
So even bigger add on to that, I listened to Donny Womack. The only reason that, because I knew Donny Womack was out before Heaven or Hell, the main reason I listened to Donny Womack was literally because of your blog, where you're just specifying what songs from there that you loved. And I was like, oh, all right, if this is a project that Marco is so heavily invested in, let me actually go and listen to this Donny Womack album, project, should I say. And yeah, I get it.
Yeah, like, I think it was, because obviously if you said that you heard of Don Toliver before the Travis album, before Astroworld. If you're telling me you heard of him before that, then you were either in Houston or had the most, like, the craziest knowledge of underground music possible, because it came out, I think Donny Womack dropped maybe a day or two before Astroworld. So it was literally like a case of, he's got a crazy verse on Astroworld that's coming out. Let's release a project a couple of days before, just so that people know, like, so that's what I went back and I listened. I was just like, there's something about this guy. Like, there were certain points in certain songs where, like, he's attacking the beat with certain, like, attitudes, and like, he's like, you can tell that he's not fucking around. Like, he's here to make a stamp and make it so unique and so very much his own that you can't really compare him to anybody. Because as much as people are going to draw Travis comparisons all the time, because they're obviously the same label and they're from the same place. So there's going to be sound similarities, but I think he's got a level of versatility that Travis just doesn't have. There's a whole side of Don Toliver that Travis Scott can't even touch because he's just not got that in his bag. Like they've got the same sort of, they attack things in similar ways, in that it's sort of like psychedelic sounding. It's sort of the psychedelic trap rap. It's all got like usually heavy drums, but he brings like he brings in his R&B bag. Like he brings in his smoother sounds. He brings in his horns. He brings in his like little whistles. Like on, I think it's way bigger or five times. No, it's on 5 times. There's a cowbell which goes at the end of every beat, and it's sort of like, it's just that little twang that you know that he's from a certain place. Like he has to be from the South. Like from the way that it sounds, you're just like, it's undoubtedly a Southern artist, and he's just, I think he's only going up. I think it very much depends on whether he goes down the more Heaven or Hell, where he's got some more upbeat tracks with a couple of R&B joints in there to throw in, or if he's just going to go all in with the R&B bag and just. But I don't think he will. I think he'll stick to a sort of a balance between the lot.
You got anything?
Nah, I think he's said it perfectly. I can't imagine a world where he commits to just slower songs, or commits to more so the R&B bag, especially when, correct me if I'm wrong, Lemonade is probably his best performing song.
Numbers wise, probably.
Yeah, I would assume.
Better than What to Do?
Probably.
Numbers wise, almost certainly.
Yeah, probably.
Because that was like a song that you couldn't really like. It was everywhere because it was that internet money. So like they obviously create a certain sort of vibe of all of their music. So it's always going to be like that sort of, it's that poppier sound. So it's going to appeal to more people.
Yeah.
Whereas like past stuff is always like, it's a bit more raw and a bit more niche, like the sound of it. So obviously less people are going to buy into it.
I mean, I have to admit, the only reason I'm even saying that is probably one of his better performing songs is because there was a 2-week period where I saw people dancing to it on TikTok, and I assume once it gets to TikTok, it's up there. It's clear. But nah, yeah, I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if he suddenly decided that he's gonna just stop making the more upbeat type music and just stick to this bag. It would be very shocking, even though I'll see why, but I'll be shocked. I
couldn't even see why, and I don't think there's any reason to. I think you have 2 albums which have a similar feel to them because you were able to create an environment around them which create a similar feel, but 2 very different albums. Like you're saying, you're using one is up tempo, one up 5, and one R&B. So you've already shown the duality that you have. You have features where you're upbeat, you're high. You have features where you're rapping over trap beats and download dirty like you're from the deep south. And then you have features like Moon where you're singing better than Beyonce. Yes, I said it. Yes, I said it. Beehive, come at me. I dare you.
You're gonna get attacked.
The thing is, the Beehive can't say anything to me because all I'll say is, so do you think Formation is a top 75 song of all time? Bro. And then they have to shut up. So like because I think he's one of these special new age artists who just has so many bags. Why they shouldn't cipher themselves into one, and they don't need to. I just think it's about as he's done here really well, separating those bags. Like I didn't like, for example, I say it all the time. You learn Future has laid down the blueprint for everybody. Everyone, every single human being that wants to do this shit. You release the trap album one week, you release the R&B album the next week. Don't try and do the stupid shit that Canadian nigga did where he said, I released them all on the same album and it doesn't make sense and nobody listens to it and no one likes it. Just release them separate weeks, control the market like that. And Don here, he released what?
He's gonna get his digs in. He's gonna get his digs in. Whether
am I wrong? Am I wrong?
It's a whole Don Toliver.
Am I wrong?
I need to add Drake somehow.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
That's not the point. That's not
the point. Because if I'm wrong, then I'll take it back. But if I'm not wrong, then it's to accentuate the point where Don got it right, Future got it right, other people got it right. You want me to dig at someone else? Okay, Shroom Life, they got it wrong. They haven't recovered since when they tried to do that triple album shit. Since you want to be defending Aubrey.
That's fair. See, just what's it called? Just make your this is versatile, man.
It's not this. Our audience doesn't listen to Racial Rumor. They listen to Drake because I'm the one who checks the analytics. Roll your eyes, nigga. This is why you're getting replaced. You think Marco's here for a joke? But yeah, no, I think Don's done it like right in the sense where you can show your different sides in different projects and different albums. I would never, and through your features, you'll show your different sides. And he's set up just like the guy you put him in the same mental breath with. Roddy Ricch is set up similar to how Baby's set up. They're gonna be the feature artists that everyone runs to for like a decade. Rod Wave's gonna be that too, by the way. But they're just set up to be those guys, and so they'll have so many opportunities to showcase so many different versatile sides that you never really need to pigeonhole yourself down when it comes to albums, because you'll always be able to do what you want, and then whatever you can't do on that project, you can feed the streets through the features that will readily come to you all the time, which I think is dope.
This guy thinks it's so slick.
I got to as well.
What I do?
Just shut up. Just shut up.
What I do?
You know what? The only reason I'd say I can see why he'll change, because I agree with you wholeheartedly, he definitely should not change. The only reason why, if he does change, I'll be able to somewhat say I could see it. I can somewhat see it coming. It's literally just because of Moon and no other reason. Because there's, in the back of my head, there's always a world where once a big artist gets you to do one sort of vibe, there's always sort of, I don't know, man. In my head, it's like, I can see a world where that artist now decides, this is what I'm going to stick to. This is the bag I'm going to stick to. I hope he doesn't. I really hope he doesn't. But in that same world, I wouldn't be shocked if Shansia drops an album and the 80% of it is her just singing and not getting into her dancehall bag. I wouldn't be shocked because she sang on Kanye's album and it worked. You get what I'm saying?
I get your hypothesis. I just don't. What evidence would you have to support that ever happening?
It's happened. It definitely happened, but no names come to mind right now because you're putting me on the spot. It's happened. Ask me again next week.
No. I'm gonna round us off here. This is Swangin on Westheimer.
Thanks for watching that video. If you liked it, hit the like button, comment, and please subscribe.